Hi everyone, it's Ellie Mae with Swift Creek Customs, and I am here today with some updates. Siser has released version 1.1.8. It is currently available on the website. I want to take you out there and show you a couple things on where you can find this. So I'm going to go out to the Siser website, siserna.com. I'm going to go to Cutters and under Leonardo Design Studio. Currently, as I'm recording this video, the version 1.1.8, it's found under the account and Siser information. You can sign up for a free account with Siser. And once you register with your account, you can find the software here. Now, currently, as I'm recording this video, it is under the beta versions, but it is going to quickly go out to public release. So even by the time you see this video, it may be in public release. Beta versions are test versions that are released to the public after the closed beta testing. So it's just to see if there's any additional features. Typically what we see is that it isn't a bug that is picked up by all users, but what I'm seeing is random issues with users such as printer issues or Wi-Fi issues, the connections, but it doesn't affect all issues or all users once it goes out as the open beta. So it's a way that they can test with more users than our beta testing team. So right now on the website, it is under the beta. If you want to look at the notes, I am not going to read those step by step for you, but I have organized this into a way that I'm going to share 15 plus new features that are available in the software. Some are small, some are bigger than others, some are very highly requested. So here is how you can find the notes on any version of the software that is out there on the website. So you'll see different versions here, and you may see different dates because those dates are when it was input into the software for the Siser team and things were released to the Siser beta testing group. Now I'm part of the beta testing group, so I have been playing with these features for a few weeks, and sometimes I'm playing with multiple versions at the same time, so it's hard to remember what's coming out and what is currently in the software. So I'm going to break this down hopefully simply for you. Check out the description in this video, below this video, for the chapters. Chapters are going to let you jump to specific parts of the video or to specific areas of what feature you're looking for. So I did have a request to have one video with as much as content in it as possible when there is a new release out. That's what I'm going to try to do. So if you want to check out those chapters to skip to a certain point, it's in the description below. So again, this is on the siserna.com website. Once this goes to current release, you're going to see it here at the top for the Windows and the Mac users. And then you will also see release notes here. That's where you can find the same information as what I clicked on down here for the 1.1.8. So that's where you can find it. You can read those notes. You can get into the software every time there's an update released and you can play. So we're going to jump back over to the Leonardo Design Studio software and I'm going to show you what some of these new features do. So the first one I want to show you is going to be one that happens when you first open the software. When I first opened 1.1.8, you can now have both of your artboards open at one time. You can see in my video here, my artboard, and I have reported it, the panel, because of my screen size on my laptop computer, my properties panel, when they're both extended, it extends over the edge of my screen. If I move that to my dual monitor, where it's a larger screen, it doesn't do that. So it's dependent on your screen size. If you have a super tiny laptop screen size, then you may not be able to fit everything on to the page anyhow. But you can also collapse both of these. So that is a little part. So you can see your full design mat. So that's one little feature. The next one I want to share with you is in regards to text. Now there were a couple things in the notes. One was about how you can hide different font styles. I'm not going to focus on that. What I want to show you here is I'm going to type out my text and you have a new option up here where you have your center, your left, your right, but you now have this no wrap. So if I were to continue typing this, you can see that my text wraps in my text box, and it's going to wrap in my text here. And even if I increase or decrease the size of my font style, it would still wrap it to the next line in previous versions. I'm going to make a copy of this, double click on it to open it up. Now if I come up here to this little menu at the top, I can choose no wrap, and that is going to extend my text all on one line. So then you can grab the little bounding box and you can resize that text as needed, but it shows it all on one line. This is a highly requested feature by users, and it's now available in 1.1.8 or higher. Okay, so the next feature is actually several different things that I want to show you. They're all included in one place, so we're going to go over those all together. If you go to File and Preferences, you have several different options under your preferences now. I'm going to go here to the All Preferences so I can show it all at one time. You have your language, your measuring units. I believe those were already in there. You now have an option of keyboard nudge, so you can change this and make it smaller. This is awesome. I forgot about this one because it just showed extra preferences. So I can come in here and I can change this to say 0.175. And then when I use my keyboard arrows, it's going to nudge that in a smaller amount than the 1/4 inch that it was previously set for. Now I'll talk about the small page margins here in just a second. You have the option to have it defaulted to use a cutting mat or not use a cutting mat. So if I were to uncheck this, I could then change my media size if I wanted it to be 20, say I'm using Romeo, so I want it to be 24. Let's see if it'll do it with my Juliet selected. If I wanted to select 24 by 24 inches, if I open a new design mat, it is now going to show as a 24 inch by 24 inch media size. Don't pay attention over here. I have Juliet in my cut settings, so it won't actually show higher than 13.5 because Juliet is the machine chosen. So it will let you design on a larger mat now. So you could set your media size to whatever you wanted under those preferences. So I'm going to come back over here to Preferences, All Preferences. I am going to then choose, I'm going to set this back to 12 by 12 because that is what I would prefer. I'm going to choose Use Mat, and when I do that, I can change this. If I were to always be using a 12 by 24 inch mat, I could select that, hit Accept, open a new design mat, and there's my 12 by 24 inch cutting mat. Now I'm going to come back over here because I don't use a 12 by 24 inch cutting mat all the time, and I'm simply going to change that back to a 12 by 12. Now, there are other options here under the editor options. You also now have, when you are doing certain actions, such as drawing shapes, drawing curves, zoom, or the new one, show hints. I'll get to that one here in just a second. But you can specify if you want it to only perform the action once or if you want it to continue. So if I have this selected, drawing shapes, I change that and I click Accept. If I come back out here, now you can see my 12 by 12 mat is my default. If I have a shape, I want to continue drawing shapes, it's going to keep my circle tool as the active tool and will continue to draw circles every time I click my mouse until I choose my select tool. Now, since I am here, I will point this out because it does show up. The new hints option, when I'm moving my mouse over top of a shape, or when I'm using a certain tool, in the bottom right corner, there is a new little feature called Hints. And it's a little yellow sticky note, and it tells you what you can do. So if I hold down my Shift key, I can draw a perfect circle. And it's going to give you different hints for that tool or for what you can do with that shape when you have that object, when your mouse is over top of that object. So you'll see that pop up here as I'm going through this tutorial. So I've kind of inserted this new feature in above where I wanted to talk about it, but it shows up here. And I'll show you another little thing later on about the hints and where you can find those. But if I come back up here to my preferences and I choose all preferences, if I go to editor options, I can uncheck that drawing shapes. Usually I just want to draw one shape, then I'm done. I'm going to click accept, and then it's simply going to draw one shape, and my select tool is going to be activated. So if I move over the center point of this, you can see that hint in the bottom right corner. It shows up and it tells me what I can do with this. So if I were to hit Alt, it's supposed to apply a duplicate. And there is my duplicate. So if I move my mouse over that center point, there's a little, you're not going to be able to see it on my screen, but there's a little crosshair in the middle of that object. Control, it constrains to vertical. Here, so let me hit Control. And it's, let's see. Oh, Control constrains to vertical, so it's moving up and down. With my Control key held on my keyboard, I can move this up and down, but it will not allow me to move it left to right. That's pretty neat. And then Shift, it's going to constrain it horizontal. So it allows me to move it horizontal, but not vertical. So that's really neat. You're going to learn a lot of the different things that you can do with each object or with your design that's selected based on those hints that show up. I've learned quite a few things when I'm testing and playing around with it. Just things that I don't normally use in my everyday cutting usage. So we've covered that. I'm going to come back up here to the preferences again. Like I said, there's quite a few things under this. Now, let me show you here. The preferences and then continue, create, and draw mode. If I were to open that, should pop open. Oh, you can easily select that here and have it continue to draw those shapes. So those are what the other options would do. So it's a faster way you could do that. You can uncheck it there if you want, or you can go into this preferences here and go to the editor options. Now, here is one place where you can find, if you do not like those hints for your mouse, then you can uncheck this and it's going to disappear. And since I'm here showing you that, I may as well go show you where it's located at otherwise. So I'm going to collapse my artboard, and then I'm going to come over here to my properties, and your mouse hints can also be deactivated on your properties panel on the right hand side. Now, under the preferences panel, I mentioned this little object right here, small page margins. This was another highly requested feature to be able to increase the size of your page margins for a print and cut. So first, let's go ahead and I'm going to pull in a design. So I'm just going to open a print and cut design. And I'm just going to 300 DPI, choose next. I use this as my example often because I know it works. So I'm going to click finished. And then I'm going to set this up as a print and cut. So if I come up to my artboard, I use my page marks. So one of the highly requested features was being able to adjust those registration marks even farther out than they defaulted to. There are a couple words of caution here, or a couple points of caution. One is this is going to depend on your printer and your printer's capabilities on being able to print outside of certain margins. So you are going to have to test this. So I'm going to show you what it does on the screen. Now, I do have a borderless printer. My Canon TS9521C, that's the model number, is a borderless printer. If you do not have a borderless printer, you may be limited in where you can put those page marks out. The other option is, or other point of reference here is, if you're cutting matless, I'm going to link a video in the description below as well on a caution there. If you are cutting a material that is a print and cut, that is matless, you need to be very mindful of where those registration marks are, because the machine needs material to hold it in the machine as it reads those marks. And if they are too close to the edge, the material is just going to fall out. And I show that very clearly in that video. So check that out below. But you do now have the option under the All Preferences to check out your small page marks. And mine is already defaulted, it's on. So there's this little mark over here. So if I click that, let's see if it'll accept it. There should be, the little exclamation marks are to warn you that it's not going to work for all users. You assume the risk when you select that, and I would highly recommend that you test it before you get into a big job and you're using your more expensive materials, because it is not going to allow you to move those marks for all printers and all users. And it is going to vary in the success in that. So make sure when you're doing that. So I'm actually going to uncheck this. Since it was defaulted on, I'm going to uncheck it. Then I'm going to change those page marks. Once I toggle the page marks off, you can see that my page marks move into that previous default setting. Now, for me, I would much rather have an accurate print and cut than to mess around with those extended marks and end up with disasters in my cuts or errors. You as the user are really just going to have to test it. And the biggest thing is, the biggest factor here is you're not just dealing with the computer and your Siser cutting machine. You're dealing with a printer that's involved as well. And every single user has different printers. Every single model of printer has different margins. Some do borderless, some do not. Some are going to work, some are not. So now that I've covered that, hopefully that gives you enough of a path to test cut. And do your test cuts before you're into a big project or using that more expensive material. The next one I just want to share real quickly is that you can now, your images do show if you turn off your print and cut marks. If you go to the Send tab, you are still going to be able to see your images. You do not have the options to print from there. That is a feature they are working on, and I will check on that to be able to print without cutting. But basically the idea is Siser Juliet is a cutting machine. It is really designed for things like print and cut. That's why that feature is available currently right now. But they do know that people would like to be able to print and test the size of a design before they cut it. So they are working on that. Okay, I'm going to turn on my page marks again, and I'm going to set this up for my print and cut. If you find, like I had previously, you see these red marks here. Red means error. So if you are showing red on any of your registration marks, that means you need to change something. It means you need to adjust something. Usually it is as simple as there's two things I need to adjust here. Because I opened my software up, my page size is currently A4. I need to adjust that for the letter size. And then I'm going to choose and toggle my page marks. Now you can see, once I adjusted it to letter size, my marks now show as black. Personally, I'm a full page mark person, but it really just depends on your project. With the Siser, you can adjust those marks, and you can actually adjust them in very, very small to your design. So you could print and cut just in that small section of your paper. If your printer is capable of printing, if your page size is smaller than a letter or a standard page size, just make sure, be cautious about jamming your paper in your machine if you're cutting smaller than your normal page sizes. That's just an extra tip that I threw in there. So let's see if I can change this back. I hit Control Z and it adjusted my mark spacing back. So I have my page marks. So the next thing I want to share, I opened this up as a print and cut. You can see that my image is all one piece. If I go over here to the Send tab, choose Send, when I brought that image in, it has a cutting contour. So it does have cut lines on it because it was traced. Now you currently have the option to ungroup those cut lines from your traced image, which is awesome. Another neat feature. So there's two ways you can find this. Right click and choose Paths, Ungroup Paths, or under the new header at the top left is another Paths menu. Then you can choose Ungroup Paths as well. So you have two places to find that. I'm a right click person. I'm just going to choose Ungroup Paths. Now all of my objects are individual objects and all of my cut lines are individual cut lines. So I'm going to use this cut line as an example here. Now if I were to send it exactly like this, I've moved my image. If I go to the Send tab, what you're going to see is that it's not my image moved, but my cut line didn't, because they are separate. So make sure when you're working with this that you are mindful of that. Now let's just collapse that so we can see something. So if I come over here to my layers panel, you're going to see now that it has broken out my cut contours. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to undo this. So I am back to my image and my cut line is still connected after I open the traced image. If I right click and I choose ungroup, it's going to then ungroup those and you can see those in your layers panel. So each one of these cut contour, so that one is the selected one. This says Cricut because that's the name of the file. But your cut contour is here. You can see that my cut contour is below my image. So if I were to bring this image, I could actually bring that up above, and then I should be able to easily grab my cut line. Now I want to show you a couple things here with this cut line, and it'll be easier if it's not with the design. So now that I have my own individual cut line, I can double click on it and I can activate the edit points. So let's zoom in here. So you can activate the edit points in two ways. You can use the menu in the bottom left, the edit curves, click on that, or you can double click on it and it's going to bring up those edit points. So then you could go through and you could edit this as needed. I'm going to zoom back out here and I'm going to hit undo and move that line back to where it was. So let's zoom in here and I'm going to show you the next feature. So currently you can see that my cut contour, and you could go through here and you could rename these if you would like. The cut contour is set to my cut tool, which is blue. Both of these used to be blue and I requested that they be a different color so we could easily determine that. So what I want to show you is first I'm going to come up here, I'm going to select my cut contour, which is separate from my image, and I'm going to build a contour around that. So this is a way you could create a kiss cut and then a die cut around your sticker. Since my cut line is released from my image, I am able to then build a contour. And I want to build an editable contour in this case. Increase the size of my amount however you want. And I'm going to just change this color so that everybody can see it. So we can see that my offset is larger than my regular cut or my kiss cut. If I click apply, you're going to see that it's going to be in front. That's okay for our purposes. What I'm going to come down here and do is, if you notice, it defaults to print. So I'm going to select this and I'm going to choose the full cut, which is going to be my die cut. And then you can see that it is now designated as a dark green. So that's a new feature. The next one, while we're here in the layers panel, you now have this little button here that says more. So you can do several different things in this panel. You can select current color, select all. So if I choose select all, it's going to select everything on my page. If I click more, you can invert your selection, select current layer. So let's see here. Click off to deselect, click on one, select current layer. That would be the whole, everything's under layer one. I haven't designated out a second layer. You can select shapes by color. Now in this print and cut, I don't necessarily have it. So let's go ahead and I'm going to open up a new design mat. I'm going to have, I have a white circle. Let's change this just so you can see it a little bit better. Let's make a couple copies. Control C, Control V. I think the Alt key on my keyboard is dying. I use it a lot. Okay, so let's just make these a couple different colors so we can see on the screen. If we go back here to our layers panel, now you can see I have the different colors. If I wanted to add a layer, I can add this layer. I can take these two and I can move them down to the second layer. And then if I come over here, deselect everything. If I come here, I can choose select current layer. That would be layer 2. I can choose select shapes by color. That's going to open up my select by color, which is a new feature, and I'll show you more on that here in just a second. So on this layer, I have 2 colors. If I come out here and I deselect everything, if I select shapes by color, since nothing is selected when I choose that, then it's going to show all the colors on my design mat. Before I had layer 2 selected, so it was only going to show those 2 colors on that layer. So now you can see I can choose which one I want to select by color. This is going to come in handy when you have a more complex design than what I have on the screen, but it does show you how it works. Now the other way you can do select by color is if I come back here under the properties panel to the color picker, we now have a little eyedropper here. And I'll come back to that one. But here next to the eyedropper is a select shapes by color. So if I click on that, I'm going to get that same menu that comes up. So if I choose a different color, it's going to select that one that I have chosen. The other option we have is I am going to use this color picker. This was another highly requested feature. If I click on this, I can choose a color and it's going to change the object that I currently have selected. So if I select this light blue and I were to use the color picker and I select this light purple, it's going to change it to that light purple or pink, however it shows on your screen. So if I undo that again, let's redo that. Redo up here in the top corner. Oh, all my colors. There we go. I got my colors back. So again, select by color, the color picker. If I select an object on my screen, have that little hints open under there, and then I come over here to the color picker, I can, and you can see down here in the bottom right corner, it tells me exactly what I want to do. Change selected colors to what you click on. Shift will select all shapes of the color you click on. So if I choose the purple, it's going to change the selected object to purple. So if you have an image that you have pulled into your Leonardo Design Studio software and you want to match those colors, so I'm going to open a file. I'll put the link in the description below for where I found this, but it is a really cool site where she's a graphic designer. I did a collaboration blog post, and I'll also link that in the description below on how I used it in Silhouette Studio, but now I can do it in Leonardo Design Studio as well. So if I come up here to File Open, I am going to open a custom color palette. In this case, you could choose either option. I'm going to choose background image only because I just need it as an image for my color picker. So I'm going to turn my print and cut. So this is a great feature for bringing those images in if you want to use them as color inspiration. Again, links in the description below to where I found this. She has a ton of color palettes. It is an amazing place to get inspiration. But I can come in here, and if I wanted to select this and I wanted to change my design to match this color palette, I can now collapse my artboard. I can choose my color picker, and I can come in here and I can select these items. So I can easily choose the colors that I want. I didn't change my selection, so that's why. Let's do this back again. Okay, the redo undo is doing goofy things on me because I'm on video. So select that color, change that one, select my next object, change that color, and continue on. And then I will have all of my colors, not all of them because there's not 5, but I can easily make that. And there you have all 5 of those colors from that custom color palette, and I can easily change my design. Okay, the next feature I just want to briefly touch on, it's for users who have more than one machine. They have made it easier to select which machine you are sending a job to. So you can find under File, Manage Cutters. You can see that I have a Juliet and I have a Romeo. Romeo hasn't been turned on for a while because I've been on vacation. So, but you can easily select between those, and it shows you the information there. The other place you can find it is on the Send tab. I'm just going to send this. And if I choose under Cutting at the top, then I can select my cutter, and it's going to give me the options there as well. Now, a word of caution here. This does not provide the access to run multiple machines at the same time. This is simply to select which machine you are sending your cut job to if you do have multiple cutters. They are working to have simultaneous cutting be easier, and right now it's a do at your own risk, and it could work, it may not work. But I think they really had no idea how many people would love the Siser Juliet and Romeo and want to have multiple cutting machines going at the same time. I know several people who are really wanting that feature, so it is coming. But this is where you can select your machines easily if you were to be sending it to 2 different machines, and have them both on at the same time. The next one is probably, for me, it's not really a big feature, but I do want to mention it. So under File, Preferences, you may have already seen as I glossed over it. Under the editor options, you can now set a custom dashed line. So if you're using a dashed or perforated line as a score line, or for any other thing, you can now set a custom dash length. So you have a custom dash length and a custom gap between that dashed length. So that is one for your folding and your score lines if you use the dash line as a score line. So you can set up a default for that. And then the final one I want to mention, I'm going to come over here to a new design mat, and I'm simply going to draw a couple shapes. So I'm going to draw out a rectangle. You can see those hints show up in the bottom right corner. So I have created a shape. I'm going to change the color just so you can see this here. And then I'm simply going to draw a line. I'm going to hold my Shift key down, and I'm going to draw that line, and you can see in those hints, if I want to be done, I can hit Enter, or I can right click and choose Done. So currently I have a single line. I'm going to change that color so you can see that. And then what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to change this to a dash line. And this is where you're going to find that custom dash. So if you have created a custom dash line, you now can set that for your own preference. And this is really neat. In prior software that I was working with, some of the default dash lines that came in were super, super small, which means that when I would fold my paper, it would actually tear. So this is actually a really neat feature. That's just a side note. But I want to point out this new feature about position. And how do you position something exactly where you want it? So in this case, say for instance, I'm making a card. So I'm actually going to set my card, and I'm going to uncheck this. So I'm going to set my card to the standard size, which is 8.5 wide by 5.5 in the US. It could be different for where you're at. And if I want this in the center, that's great. I could just simply select those and I could center that. That center aligns it. But what if I want this score line exactly a distance from the left edge? So if I wanted to move my score line and have it be exactly 2 inches from the left edge of my card base, I'm going to select my blue rectangle. I'm going to click the position, and I'm going to set this to 0 so it's at the left edge of my mouse or my mat. And then I'm going to select my score line, and I'm going to choose 2 inches and hit Enter, and it's going to go exactly to my 2-inch mark from the left edge of my cutting mat. Now, what if I want to go in the middle? So if I know that 3/4 is equal to 0.75 decimals, so I took 3 divided by 4 on my calculator, that's 0.75, I could simply type in 2.75 and hit enter. It's going to move it there. What if I don't know my decimals, which many users don't? It depends on how low you go, how much I know. So I'm going to come in here, I'm going to type in 2 3/4 inch, and actually what I'm going to do is 3 3/4 inch, so you can see it move on the screen, and then I'm going to hit enter, and you can do that. It's automatically going to do the calculation for the decimal place. Now, if you're in the millimeters, centimeters, this probably doesn't mean a whole lot to you, but for us in the US, you can simply type in your 4 3/4 inch, hit enter, and it's going to automatically calculate that for us. That is a lot of information. I wondered how I would get through it. I know it's a lot. I hope you have stayed with me through this. There is going to be a lot more. I have been testing features for weeks now on new things coming to the Siser Leonardo Design Studio software. I hope you'll join me. Make sure to like, subscribe, and click that bell for notifications for future content on the Swift Creek Customs YouTube channel. And I hope that you just get into the software and you just start to play. Just play around with it. That's how I'm learning. They give me a new beta version and I just start clicking buttons and I figure it out, and then I test it more and more and more. So I hope you'll stay with me on this journey, and I hope you have a great day. Thank you.